I put together a little highlight reel for the past year of different clips of the different people that have come on this podcast and shared their experience and their stories. And this first one was recorded on January 25th, and it was Lee Leprechaun. He came on and he shared his story, and this is him talking about his music process as an EDM DJ.
Sometimes I'm inspired by a song, like I'll use it for a reference track. Like say I hear like the way it's structured a certain way. I'm like, oh, okay, I want to kind of mimic that, but with my sounds. So I'll throw a reference track in there and I'll follow it 8 bars by 8 bars. Like, all right, they've got kicks here. They've got a snare that comes in at this time piece. They've got a riser here. I'll kind of mimic that for structure, but I'll use my own sounds for it. And a lot of times I'll just sit there and go through like someone's sample pack and start listening to stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that sound. And then I'll go through and try it myself.
This next one was on February 22nd, and it was Ellis Meek shared his story as well. There was a little cassette tape boom up in Canada where he's living. Check it out.
Well, in Canada, aren't cassettes like in, or weren't they just in still for like distribution?
They had a brief resurgence in this certain sect of people.
Yeah.
But it was pretty short-lived, you know. It kind of went on a thing where there were certain artists doing the tape label thing briefly. I'm sure it's still out there in a minimalist sort of way, but not as much as it was a couple years ago.
Well, they were so excited to get tapes, and then they, hop in their, 2021 Lexus or whatever, and they're like, yeah, we don't have a tape cassette player in here, so that was pointless.
On March 29th, Naija Chanel came on, and she expressed how music has a feeling as an artist to her, and maybe you have the same perspective. Listen here.
Music has a feeling, So me, I'm trying to give a feeling in every way that I can. If you're feeling good, great. If you're feeling sad, okay, great. If you want to get through it, we can get through it together. So that's really more so what I try to look at when I go to make these different kind of music. You know what I'm saying?
On April 26th, the Odyssey came on. That's KJ and DJ Johnny Juice. And we were talking about how the music industry is filled with way too many genres right now, and they love to label. Listen to the word that they should now trademark that Johnny Juice came up with at the end of this one.
Industry has boxes, and if they can't stick you in a bucket, they don't know what to you. And we don't belong. We don't go in a bucket. We go in 5 buckets. The first thing that people ask you if you say you're a musician, God, I don't know what to tell them.
You should say what I say, the good kind. So they say, what kind of music do you make? The good kind, right? So the thing is, somebody asked me a long time ago, what genre would I call it? I'm like, I committed genre side a long time ago.
On May 31st, Nerdy G came on and talked about the process of the song that we created together called Only Human. Listen to how he came up with his side of the process and how the experience was for him.
Want from me? I don't know what you need from me. I don't know. That was just going through my head over and over and over again, to where I just had to put it down. And then after saying it so much, my words just started to form themselves. It's also the mindset I was in at that point, because, I just lost a friend of mine. It was just where I was at, headspace wise.
And, one thing that people won't know about that session is I couldn't even tell you how many sessions we've done the past few years. Obviously this was, this was originally going to be a group track. But then once it came time, I was like, you know what? This has Nerdy G written all over it, because I only wrote one verse to it. And I'm like, if anything, we'll do a feature or whatever like that. And, obviously you ended up deciding that. But we made that beat live, like we made that might have been one of the quickest beats I've ever made.
The beat and we wrote on
exactly. It was like all done in one session. We knew what was going on. I mean, obviously me overanalyzing everything. It took me probably a week just to get my verse right, but Nerdy G had it sounded great. On June 21st, DJ Rob Swift came on and talked about winning his first DMC battle. Listen here.
First battle was in March of 1991 after training with Dr. Butcher for about 8 months. And I placed 3rd in that competition. And then the following year, I entered the same battle and won. But in between that, I had a lot of failures and setbacks. There were many battles throughout that year that I entered. it took me a full year to realize my goal and win. And I think the moral of the story there is people might fixate on, wow, it took them a year to win a competition, but don't get it twisted. Within that year, I entered multiple battles that I lost.
On July 26th, Kais came on, and with the success that he's had, he shared his opinion on whether you should go to school or not if you're seeking a music career. Listen to what he said.
Yeah, I do recommend it, to be quite honest with you, because like sometimes there are certain questions that you just cannot find the answers for on, like, say, YouTube, because like yes, YouTube is like really detailed. You get like people filming themselves, like working on a digital audio workface, showing you how things are done, but it's just not enough to go into like the super detailed questions that you sometimes just cannot find an answer for unless you have like an instructor in the room to point out, exactly what to do.
On August 30th, I spoke to Halfon. We discussed the evolution I noticed in his music. The growth seemed much more substantial than I'm used to hearing. Listen to what he had to say about it. I did notice like a big growth, like don't take this the wrong way either.
I promise you I won't. Yeah. If you say, you sound shittier than you did before, and be like, oh, everything I'm doing is just, it's all been a lie.
There was this, I listened to a lot of your old stuff prior to this episode, and I was listening to it, and then I compared it to the new EP that just came out, In Transit. And I was like, wow, there was like a lot of growth in between there, like,
thanks, man.
And like what it was like, what I mean by that is like, I liked a lot of the songs. I'm trying to think of specifically as I'm saying that, I'm trying to think of the songs I listened to, but I liked them a lot. There was one thing or a few things about each song I liked individually. And then like when I listened to In Transit, I was like, whoa. I was like, is this the same artist? I was like, it's totally like it was like totally like evolved, and you could say like growth is the best word. Like,
yes.
What do you think it was in between, your first recording and this one?
I think one of the big factors in this was 100% working with AJ, because seriously, I'm just like so eternally grateful to just have him give me his time. We spent a lot of time working on everything. One of the things that I had mentioned too was just that point freshman year of college where my sound kind of took a turn for the better. And then 4 years down the line, going in from like senior year into like that, it's not actually a gap year, but the gap between my graduation and moving to New York, and which is basically just like post-grad, like first half of the pandemic together, my sound had hit another point where I was just really leaning into the experimental thing and just really trusting my ear. I think a lot of times I'd use references and being like, oh, I'm going to like produce like this or produce like that. I just sort of trusted the techniques that I had learned over time and just kind of let run haywire. So it was basically like coming through to New York and actually being able to work in a proper studio really helped me focus. I'm trying to think, I don't want to say focus my power because that sounds weird.
It's a superhero.
I know, seriously, right?
Focus your strength.
Actually focus my strength specifically. Into just like applying A, formulas, B, just fucking around with it, and C, just giving myself more confidence to just trust myself and work with it.
On September 27th, Jason Mitchell, the bassist of Low Down Dirty, came on and was talking about their song Shine and explained what the wobble sound was in that song. You won't believe it. Listen here.
And like you hear that initial melody, that what kind of, it sounds like a hip hop beat. That womp, 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 womp.
That's the first thing I thought of was like EDM, like dubstep. I was like, dude, that's kind of sick.
It's his guitar. That's a guitar.
I thought that. I was thinking, I was like, did he have like a pedal or something, like a foot pedal? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, he makes all his own effects. He's got Nax effects. So that it's a digital amplifier. You can kind of go in there and like make your own sounds and tones and then bring them with you. So yeah, he created that sound.
On October 25th, Chloe Wilder came on and spoke about how and when she first started playing piano. Listen here.
Oh, I've been taking taking piano lessons since I was like 4, and we'd always had a piano in my house. My grandma had gotten a piano before I was born, and she ended up not playing it, but it was like a really great piano. And I was just like the one who always, and I was little, and so I would just like bang on it when I, walk by or whatever. And then eventually I started, but it was cool too, because it wasn't something like, my mom didn't like push me to take piano lessons, which I feel like creates like the angsty musician thing, which I am one, but I wasn't pushed into, taking piano lessons. Like, and I'm glad that I was so like classically trained that early in life, but it was something I was all in. Like, I wanted to do that so bad. I just really, really enjoyed music. And yeah, so that was all me.
On November 11th, I had a bonus episode for the hometown release, which featured Steve Dunn, who's a musician from my hometown area. He actually came on and shared his tips on how to navigate the music industry when you first come in. Listen to what he had to say.
The first thing I would suggest is figure out what type of music, like if they want to do originals or if they're open to doing covers so that they can get in front of generous crowds to hear their original music. I would tell them to do that. I would tell them to even get into booking bands, booking shows for other bands, because that's kind of a lost art. And, they collect a commission, but they're also developing a relationship with that venue at the same time.
Yeah.
So if you're out searching for venues to play, how great would it be if you're also searching for venues? You say, I have this band that'll play there and they pay me 15% of what you pay them.
Yeah.
So, but you're also developing a contact. And I would tell people to, work on their Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and just, I think you have to, in this climate. I remember hearing you should put out a record every 8 months. And I thought that was daunting. But now when I hear about it, I hear people go, you should put out a song a month minimum.
Right.
And for the whole month, make sure you nonstop. You can't let off the gas anymore because you lost in the algorithm. And once you're out of it, you're out of it forever almost.
Yeah.
Unless you buy it back in.
Right.
So I would tell artists to do that. Continuously write with other people, continuously release good music that people like, sell directly, find the fans that like you, find out exactly what they want, sell them that instead of trying to tell them to buy something you created that you thought they would like. Book bands and, just can never stop. You got to be relentless in this business now.
And the final artist on call of 2021 was Eddie Collier. He came on and shared this crazy story about his first introduction to the pandemic and how it happened when he was performing live. Won't believe this story. Put yourself in his shoes on this one.
It was March of 2020, and I booked a flight, and I was going to be there for an entire month. I booked out shows. I booked sessions and all this other stuff like that. I got out there and everything was amazing. I loved like the energy and the vibe. And then I was on stage one night and the police came to the door and said at 12 o'clock, everyone has to be out of here because there is a mandatory quarantine in effect.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I ended up leaving there and getting kind of stranded in LA, having to figure out stuff. Thankfully, I had some amazing people, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit more later around me. But yeah, in that time, though, even with all of the pandemic stuff and crazy things happening, LA was still like the place because just mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, it just felt right being there.
As you can tell, 2021 was pretty action-packed on this podcast, and I tried to keep it as interesting as possible. So if you have anything you'd like to say to me, hit me up on all the socials at Music Mondays Podcast, all one word, or go to musicmondayspodcast.com and send me a message from there as well.